to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a SportsEthos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle every week. I'm Candace Higgins.
No, I'm Tino.
And as always, it is a pleasure and it's a privilege to talk Hawks with you, especially when the Seahawks win. Seahawks win, guys. Seahawks win. It was a fun overtime thriller against the Lions. It's always an entertaining game when these two teams play each other. It's always just super fun, jam-packed, a lot of offense. Seahawks win the game 37-31. Gino leads the pack, having a great game from him, throwing for 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, only had 1 sack, 116 passer rating. The guy he wasn't flawless. He had a pretty big mishap in the game, but I think it's close. It was one of his better games for sure that I know I've seen from him. Tino, what were your thoughts on the game?
Boy, I think Gino is the place to start. You know, he bounced back from that rough week 1. He's a smart quarterback, you know, and he knows how to pick apart defenses. You give him a little bit of time and he's able to execute. I love him. I love following him, you know, coming off of Russell Wilson and the circus that was Russell Wilson, to have a quarterback like Gino that is so calm and so cool and so understated is a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you. And I think he was brilliant. He did, besides that 1 sack that was like West Virginia, he thought he was West Virginia Gino scrambling everything. He looked great. I think, you know, the team, this might surprise you, might surprise some listeners, but I think the team looked there are a lot of similarities between this game and the Rams game, but 3 turnovers. You know, you got 3 turnovers and Gino executed. And I think those were the 2 big differences, but we'll dig into it. There's tons of stuff to talk about, but those 3 turnovers and Gino's play to me were the keys.
Yeah, you know, that's a really good point. It's really interesting in particular because, I feel like Gino played a good game for what he was given in week 1. I don't feel like Gino played a bad game. The statistics weren't going to pop out at you, obviously, because the Seahawks did not have the ball, especially in the second half. I think they ran 9 plays. He really just didn't have a chance to do much of anything, and they didn't really have a plan in place with those 2 tackles going down. You could see with the opportunity to plan for that, to plan around that, they were able to much better execute. But I'd like you to elaborate on your point, Tino. That's interesting in terms of there not being a big difference between week 1 and week 2. Can you talk a little bit about that, except for the turnovers in Gino's play?
Sure. You know, I think the running game didn't really get off. You know, we saw, you know, Kenneth Walker had 2 touchdowns, obviously, but he averaged 2.5 yards. Mm-hmm. And didn't really, he looked explosive, but they couldn't really open a ton of holes for him. Mm-hmm. You know, the receivers played as well as I guess you might have expected from them. I think the big difference in their play, in my mind, was the introduction of Devon Witherspoon with the defense. They still, you know, they still gave up a ton of yards. Jared Goff still completed a ton of stuff. 323 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, right? And Nwosu had a couple of huge plays to create 2 of the 3 turnovers, and that to me was the difference. But you know, it's still a team trying to establish the run. It's still a team relying upon Geno Smith's intelligence, right? It's still a team that they were able to pass block pretty well in this game. But I think that the turnovers are the key. And the fact that they were able to cause turnovers was the big difference. But there's still a ton of yards given up. They still gave up a ton of, I almost said a ton of runs. There goes the Mariners again. You know, a ton of points. Kicking game still looked bad. You know, it's just, again, they were able to get pressure on Jared Goff at exactly the right time. Nwosu's hit is what caused the Trey Brown interception. And Trey Brown was able to get a big sack as well. So a couple of clutch plays on top of kind of, like I said, a similar game statistically to that Rams game. And a Jared Goff interception, which none of us saw coming. I also will say that the injury to David Montgomery, I think, was huge. He was able to really run the ball through the middle of the defense and soften up that Seahawks defense. And once he went down, it looked a bit different. But I think this is the true talent of the Seahawks, right? I think they are somewhere between a 9 and 11 win team. I'm guessing it's a good team. It's not a great team. And they're able to pass quite a bit. I'd like to see them establish the run, but to me, they look again, same as they did against the Rams. Really, they just got some bad breaks against the Rams and some good breaks against the Lions. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I wouldn't have thought about it that way, but I can see a lot of the similarities. Now, one thing I will give credit for, I bashed a lot of the coverage schemes and all of that last week.
Mm-hmm.
I still had a lot of the same problems, but I will say that Devin Witherspoon seems to be able to play within the structure of those schemes far better than any of the other players that we have. There's also a question about if Trey Brown really does play better on the right side, like because Trey Brown was great. I mean, he was the complete opposite of everything that he was last week. And when Tariq Woolen went down, I was sort of afraid for my life. But his ability to step up and make some real plays, maybe he really just should be the backup behind Tariq Woolen. Maybe that's the best spot for him. But I do think they changed up some of the things in the second half. To your point, they did a little bit more simulating with pressures and hits. So that's sort of what got, I believe, if I'm waiting on the All-22 to break on the NFL app, so I still haven't had the chance to go back and look at it because NFL is always slow about releasing that kind of thing. But anyway, once I go back and look at it, I want to say that Trey Brown was in press coverage on that interception. It looked like he was in press, which we saw none of against the Rams. And so I hope that that's an encouraging sign for the staff to say, okay, this works, right? We can do a little bit more of that. We have more of our guys. We have Devin Witherspoon back. Hopefully they'll be getting Jamal Adams back soon. And hopefully they can feel more comfortable being more aggressive in their coverage looks because they've got the guys. They've got the guys who can execute. They've got the guys who they should be able to trust. And though Witherspoon's a little up and down with his play, you love what you saw, that his mistakes were understandable. His mistakes were rookie mistakes. And the talent that he flashed, I think, outweighed anything negative.
He was a game changer for me. He bit on a flea flicker, obviously. Like that's a smart play to run against a rookie corner in his first game. You got to chalk it up to good play calling by the Lions. Yep. But that play on Sam Laporta on fourth down where he closed and was able to bat the pass away, that we don't see that from anybody but Reek, right? Okay. You have to be able to accelerate, have the athleticism to do it, have the instincts to understand what's coming. And that play alone changes the defense for me. That says you can be more aggressive. You can play more man, right? You can leave him out there on an island. His instincts were phenomenal in coverage. And they haven't even really cut him loose with his aggression yet. They haven't let him blitz. So I was psyched. Seeing him, for me, that was the big highlight, the big takeaway, the big highlight from this game against the Lions is this defense will be different. The reason why they were able to cause 3 turnovers was because they got aggressive, right? Nwosu's hit on Montgomery was, I don't know if I didn't, like I said, all 22 hasn't come out, but I didn't know if it was a run blitz or what it was, but that hit was big, right? That was an aggressive hit in the backfield, right? Him putting pressure on Jared Goff and causing that interception. Trey Brown playing as close to the receiver as he was. Devin Witherspoon sticking with Laporta. This is all aggressive type plays. You saw Derek Hall get pressure, right? Yeah. This is what the Seahawks need to do. The Seahawks defense is not going to hold the other team to 14 points. That's not the way this defense is built, right? The offense has to play well, and the defense has to create a turnover or two and win that battle. The Seahawks won because they won the turnover battle 3-0. They didn't turn the ball over, and the Lions turned the ball over 3 times. To me, that was the difference. Ultimately, the difference in the game was that turnover battle, and you don't cause them unless you're aggressive because they're not handing it to you.
Yeah, and then they started kind of playing soft, I think, at the beginning, and I think they made some real halftime adjustments. My fear was that they were not, that they were just going to continue to do what they were doing, stick with the plan, and then get eaten up. Now there were some, as much as there were some good things, I want to actually, before I get into the negatives, I want to switch back over to the offense. One of the things that I liked that I saw from the offense was them being intentional about using the tight ends. The tight ends were a big part of this win. They were really underrated. They were able to get free, get open, make plays, move the chains, kind of playing what we thought JSN would be doing. It was really the role of the tight ends, and I think you needed to lean on your tight ends, not just because you needed the outlets in the intermediate, but also because they were going to be able to help a lot with those tackles in the pass protection, especially, and that's how they used them. And it seems like as the game went along, Shane Waldron became a little bit more comfortable with leaving some of those tackles out on an island, and so the tight ends could get a little bit more involved in the pass game, and it just worked really complimentary. Now, you didn't get as much out of JSN as a result, but in my opinion, whatever it takes to win, I wanted to see that the team could still use both. Mm-hmm. I knew that they were going to go with more 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets because of JSN. They talked about it a lot, but can you still get physical? Can you still get aggressive? Can you still use the versatility of the roster that has 3 really good tight end options and take advantage of those 2? And it was good to see.
Well, there are 10 targets, right? The tight ends got 10 targets total amongst them. And you don't see that out of a lot of NFL teams, right? Noah Fant had 4 targets. Colby Parkinson had 3. Will Dissly had 3. And oftentimes those are kind of quick hitting patterns too. And that's a way to neutralize that pass rush and have Geno get rid of the ball quickly. It was smart. And we're not used to talking about this Seahawks coaching staff being smart, but I think they played it right. But they played it really, really well. I think it's a great point about the tight ends getting as many targets as they did, and that offensive line, as maligned as they've been, and as much as we've really kind of talked about or trashed Forsyth and Curhan, they played well. Yeah, they played well. I saw you post on Twitter. I'm always calling it Twitter, by the way. I'm never.
Yeah, I'm not calling it X. It's against my nature.
Yeah, I can't. But Evan Brown he's one of 9 offensive linemen. You posted this, one of 9 offensive linemen who hasn't given up a quarterback pressure yet. That's huge, right? To solidify the middle of that offensive line is a huge deal. You saw Damian Lewis stepped up a little bit in this game. I think that the fact that the line held up, they needed all these things to happen. They needed turnovers. They needed Witherspoon to hold up. They needed the offensive line to be able to hold up against the pass rush. They needed the real Geno Smith to come out. All those things happened, I think, to contribute to the win. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to your point, Damian Lewis is going to be my next guy to talk about because I was extremely concerned. Coming out of week 1, I know you're going against Aaron Donald, but he had a pass and I don't take PFF as great. It is a lot, but to be honest, PFF is one of the more consistent metrics that evaluate, particularly offensive linemen and defensive linemen, right? So you take them with a grain of salt, but take them. Damian Lewis had like a passer rating of like 4. Right. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. And that you would have thought that the turnstiles really were the tackles, but given how the tackles held up, if you go back and look at the film, actually, Damian Lewis let a lot of that stuff happen on his watch. And yes, I understand it's Aaron Donald, but seriously, like, you've been in the league. This is his 4th year. It's a contract year. And that's a guy who was your best offensive lineman last year. If he was going to regress as much as he showed he was going to regress, at least by week 1 metrics, then really, for me, the offensive line didn't have a chance, because if your best guy is going to be your worst guy and you already have question marks in 2 other positions, where does that really leave you? So his ability to step up and play well, he still doesn't. It's still odd to me that he doesn't do as well with run blocking that he does in pass blocking. It makes absolutely no sense to me, given that his first year was elite in run blocking, but he's doing very well over there. His contributions helped quite a big deal, keeping Geno safe. They needed somebody else to step up on that line and help out those tackles. Like you said, Evan Brown's done a really serviceable job, I think, to this point. I think he's done really well. That's all you can ask from a center, is to just not get pushed over the point of attack, be accurate with your snaps, and call your protections. That's really all you want from the center position. Now, Phil Haynes is still he's still got a lot to prove to me. And right now, I would consider him the weakest link on the O-line. I was hoping that wouldn't be the case. I was hoping maybe it'd be the center, but that has not been the case. Phil Haynes still showed several issues. He had a couple of penalties in this past game that set the team back. So really hoping he gets it together, because if he can, I mean, he's elite in pass protection, but his run blocking is just so bad that it's tough. And
their defense is, as I said, is is not elite, right? And so they're going to have to hold on to the ball, control the clock. They're
Yes.
going to have to run. They're going to have to run block eventually, right? We're going to have to get to these games where Kenneth Walker is going to be, carrying the ball 20 times, or you have a game where he has 18 carries and Charbonnet has 12. And, especially against explosive offenses, the Seahawks are going to have to do that. And so at some point in time, your guard in Phil Haynes is going to have to be able to run block, right? Damian Lewis is going to have to run block. As you said, he's better at pass blocking right now, and he's going to have to run block. The center better in pass protection. So unless they plan to just go short game the whole game, right, to control the clock, in my opinion, as it gets colder, right, as you play these explosive offenses, you're going to have to be able to run the ball better. That's part of why I want to see, if you get the line operating all five together cohesively and you get those tackles back, at minimum, they can work together in the running game. But we'll see. I'll take the win. I didn't expect the win. As we know, like 0-2 is kind of a death sentence to your season. Not a lot of teams go 0-2 and make the playoffs. Rarely does that happen. It did with the Bengals last year, but for them to start 1-1, it wasn't the games we expected them to win, but to start 1-1, hey, I'll take it. Carolina coming to town next week, we might get to 2-1. I wanted to point out too, this pass rush without Boye Mafe, right, against what we talked about being an elite Detroit Lions offensive line, and two good running backs and a quarterback that's really functions best off of play action. The fact that they got 6 hits and the pressures that they did and a couple of sacks, to me, was a huge accomplishment. You're going against, as I said, Penei Sewell, who might be the best right tackle in football. And you were able, and Frank Ragnow, one of the best centers in football. And they got pressure. And I don't know that Goff looked super uncomfortable all of the time, but the fact that they were able to get some pressure, especially in clutch situations, to me was huge. And I was surprised because Mafe is the one that I expected to break out.
I'm not going to say I'm pleased with the pass rush. I was not pleased with the pass rush. I thought it was adequate enough. I thought it was just enough. I thought it was just enough. I thought it was not a complete liability, but I would hope that it would not be a complete liability, because everybody talked about the Seahawks not having their 2 tackles, but the Lions were missing their left tackle, which meant that Penei Sewell had to play left tackle, and then their actual the right tackle for that game, he went down. So and then some of those pressures came in the second half after that guy went down anyway. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm just impressed with what they did from a pass rush perspective. I am impressed with Derek Hall because he had a come up game, so to speak, compared to his first game. You really saw the improvement there. You saw his ability to have a little impact on the game. He had 2 pressures. So I like to see that from him. But I feel like everybody else, I would give that more to coaching. I pan coaching, but when it does well, I will give it credit, because Trey Brown had a pressure, Jordan Brooks had a pressure, Draymond Jones, he had a few pressures, Kobe Bryant had a pressure. It came from so many other places. They were intentional about trying to get other guys involved and scheme some pressures, that I can't just give that to the defensive line and say good job.
Look, the last couple of years, any pressure, I don't care who's playing right tackle, right? It could be some stiff off the street, but the Seahawks still weren't able to actually get pressure on those quarterbacks because they were either sitting back in coverage and not being aggressive, or they were just getting locked up. So for me, as a Seahawks fan, to see any pressure, I don't care who they're playing against, I'll take it, right? And yeah, to your point, it wasn't a tremendous amount of pressure, but it was just enough to force the interception. And it was just enough in some key situations. And it's something to build off of. I hope Derek Hall gets a lot more reps. Yes. He looked explosive. He looked tough. He looked strong enough to hold up in the run, right? He's not quite as lean, I think, as Gerald Taylor, despite their weights. He just looked like he was a little bit more stout, right? A little bit able to hold up against the run a little bit better, and definitely explosive going after the quarterback. I love seeing
much higher motor.
Yes,
much higher motor
for sure. And then I don't think we can discount the coverage allowing the pass rush to get there as well. Witherspoon playing playing the way he did, Trey Brown playing better, it creates more opportunity, right? It's more time to get to the quarterback. And obviously we know those things work in lockstep. But man, Witherspoon to me changes this whole defense. It's clear they were counting on him to start week one. Mm-hmm. And it's clear the impact that it had when he wasn't able to play. Have you heard any updates on Reek Woolen's injury? Is it going to be something that, go ahead?
Essentially that they're sore, pretty much what Pete gave when he spoken with the media, is that the guys are sore. DK is sore. Reek is sore. It's nothing serious. Can he confirm that they will be able to play week 3? It really depends on how they feel, getting through some practices, seeing how they recover. So he's not going to miss significant time by any means. It's possible he might miss week 3, depending upon how the injury comes along. You don't want to push that kind of thing. I think it said it's like a AC joint or something. You just don't want to push those type of situations. So we'll see. And if Trey Brown can play as well as he played before, then I think I can live with that.
Let me ask you this, just as a random question. Would you, for next week against Carolina, would you rather have Reek Woolen back or DK Metcalf back? Which one is more important to you going against Carolina?
DK.
Yeah.
DK. Because I just don't think I don't believe in the offense for the Panthers. So now they do have a really good defense. And so I think you need to be able to counter some of their guys, and they will be missing JC Horn and those type of things. But I'd rather have DK back if I had to pick, given Trey Brown's performance. Now, if Trey Brown had not played as well as he played last week, that may change my answer a little bit. I'm just not sure JSN is in the position to step up and take. I think he's in a position to take advantage of having DK and Tyler. I'm not sure he's in the position to take the place of DK or Tyler. So, and he's still recovering from that wrist, right? I think he's still playing hurt, to be honest. So people are kind of wondering where JSN is at, and they forget the guy just had surgery 2 weeks ago. So I think he's doing very well given his circumstances. But I do want to go back and talk a little bit about sort of the pressures and the defensive lines and some of the points that you made about that. Like I said, for one, I will give credit to coaching. I think they put the guys in a little bit better position, particularly in the second half, than they did the first half. So you saw some results from that. I will say, it's really funny that you're pointing about it was any pressure. I'll say this: the Seahawks have always been able to get pressure. Not always. Last year, they were able to get pressure against weak offensive lines because of Darrell Taylor, right? Because that's his bread and butter, and that's where he lives. He lives on weak offensive lines. So, yeah, he can kill a weak guy in a heartbeat. But even in this position, now you have a tackle go down, and he only had one pressure in 26 pass rush snaps. So I really do hope, what I would like to see from a depth chart perspective is for Derek Hall to get all of Darrell Taylor's reps. So I hope that Boye Mafe can come back this week. I will say that's a pretty big deal, especially given what we saw from Darrell Taylor. I think that the new Darrell Taylor needs to become Derek Hall. Darrell Taylor needs to become Derek Hall. And then I think Taylor will do fine with the snaps that Hall was given. If he can make something work with that, great. If he can't, he has to prove that he can deserve more for me.
He needs to earn those snaps.
Yeah, he's got to earn them. He just can't be giving them because he's
right. He looks a bit not. I don't know if unmotivated is the word, but there is something about his focus and intensity that kind of waxes and wanes. And his rookie year, he missed a lot of kind of the running lane assignments and gave up a lot of big plays that way. And it's just he doesn't seem quite focused or assignment driven, and that's not something you can do, right? Especially if you're playing that edge role on this team. You have to be able to hold the edge, right? You have to be able to establish that edge and not allow that outside runs, and that's not something that he's done at all. I think at this point he's a clear passing down, third down pass rusher who is most effective going around the outside. You got to really scheme for him to be able to be effective, whereas Hall seems like a better, so far at least, a much more well-rounded edge player, which is what you need, right?
Yeah,
especially against Carolina next week, who is going to try to establish the run with Miles Sanders, right? They're trying to protect Bryce Young. it was clear if you watch the Monday night game, they're not taking the training wheels off of Bryce Young anytime soon. You know, it's kind of they're trying to get his feet wet, and it's you got to stop. You stop the run, you force him to pass, and you're going to win the game. I think that's the key. I did like Draymond Jones had 3 pressures and a sack. Jaron Reed had 3 pressures and 2 hits.
Yep.
Rick Hall had a couple of pressures, a hit in a hurry. Like those are good signs. Those are good signs. And against a team that, despite the depleted offensive line at right tackle, that's still a very good team, a very well-coached team, and a team that just beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think these are good signs, right? But all of those things said, they still gave up 300-plus yards to Jared Goff. And again, I think they won because they caused turnovers. If they can continue to cause turnovers, this team is going to be very good.
But the thing is, we all know that that's not, because you can't rely on that. That's not something that you can rely on especially from week to week. So give me the guy in Derek Hall, I'm sorry, who I believe can get more consistent pressure. Maybe he doesn't finish the sacks. Give me the pressure guy over the guy who, when he gets a pressure, will get a sack more than likely, but like it's few and far between when he gets the pressure. Like give me the disruptor. Give me the guy who can affect the game a little bit more. And I hope, and it seems like the Seahawks are doing a little bit better job of trying to find some of those guys. To your point about the coverage, I still think that was a weakness of the game, unquestionably. And at this point, given that we loved what we saw from Devin Witherspoon in his first game, especially given, I think one thing is important context. This guy didn't play in training camp much of really. He didn't get any preseason games. So this is just pure raw instincts and talent, which makes me so excited. Just like I'm excited for Tariq Woolen because he didn't play cornerback that long. I'm just excited for Tariq Woolen because he's been playing a position. I mean, for Devin Witherspoon because he's been playing a position long, but he just missed so much important opportunity in the offseason, and he was still able to show flashes of great talent, which is what you need from a number 5 pick. But given that you got those two things established, now there was a big debate over where Devin Witherspoon was going to play, and a lot of people were surprised because Pete Carroll talked so much about Devin Witherspoon at the nickel that people didn't even really know he was getting reps on the left side, to be honest. Like they kind of played other guys, Mike Jacks. They must have not played him on the left side in front of media because it just wasn't talked about from Seahawks media at all. And but he played out there. He played well. I'm wondering, in Pete's mind, is he going to stay there, or will he? I can understand how in his first game you don't want to have him do more than one thing.
Sure.
And maybe they didn't want to have him go up against Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm wondering, will you see him move around more? Because we got to talk about this nickel spot. The nickel spot is a problem. There is one clear hole in the Seahawks secondary, and in addition to being Julian Love, it is also the nickel spot. I think those two are the huge liabilities on the roster, like to the point where you got to have some extreme playmakers on the team in order to make up for just how consistently, like right now, Kobe Bryant is giving up an average of 10 yards per reception. That's a first down.
Yeah,
that's a first down guaranteed every time you target Kobe Bryant. And guess what? They are targeting him. I think in my notes I have, they've targeted him 12 times. He's allowed 9 receptions. Yep. That's tough. Like that's when you need a third down, you just go for him and it works. And Julian Love, when they played him in the slot, has been just as bad. Right now, he's allowing 11 of 14 receptions for 167 yards. 167 yards. These guys, 3 missed tackles. How are you a safety with 3 missed tackles? An NFL passer rating of 140. It's a problem. So I think the Seahawks really need to evaluate their roster at that position. People kept arguing you don't need to pay Devin Witherspoon in the nickel. Okay, well, the guy who's going to give up a first down, you'd rather have him there instead. Like, I understand he's a 5th round pick and you don't necessarily want him at nickel, but that spot is in such a bad way that it's hard to overcome. And again, because they're in the middle of the field where you already have linebackers who are a liability in coverage, it makes it worse. And that showed up in week 2.
Yep. I would say, based on the current roster and the points that you made, Trey Brown being able to hold up on the outside would be the best case scenario, right? If he can actually hold up on the outside, like you talked about, then you can move Witherspoon into the slot and really lock that slot position down, right? I also think Witherspoon in the middle of the field or playing that slot would positively impact the linebackers coverage as well, right?
Yes.
Because his presence alone and his instincts alone in the middle of the field help. Now, one thing I find interesting is, Pete Carroll's always kept his corners on the same side, right? You play right or you play left, and that's how Pete Carroll's always been.
Right.
But if they didn't do that, think about it this way: if they didn't do that, and Reek could actually follow the number one receiver, then all of a sudden Trey Brown's not matched up as much anymore, with an elite wide receiver, right? You can match him up on the outside against the number 2. But I think the way this roster is constructed, I know you posted a little bit about Artie Burns. I got experience with Artie Burns. I'm telling you right now, he's moved too many teams to be an asset. Unless the Seahawks.
I think he's better than what we got, man. It's better than what we got. It's better than what mediocre. Fine with me.
I don't know.
Give me average.
If it's me, I keep churning those 4th, 5th, 6th cornerback spots, right, until you find someone who's a diamond in the rough. We talked about Kyle Kelly. I like that pickup because there's talent there. And I'm sure they're working with them and they're teaching them all the kick step and all the things that the Seahawks corners need to learn that are different than other organizations. But to me, the answer is Witherspoon in the slot and finding that other outside corner. It's hard to find a great slot corner, right? Justin Coleman is like the last one that comes to mind for me that the Seahawks had. And that's not an easy position to fill. And like we said, we said this, I think, a couple podcasts ago. If you got him in one slot, Jamal comes back, and you've got Jamal playing up closer to the line, taking the place of, say, a Jordan Brooks. Now, all of a sudden, the middle of the field isn't easy to throw on anymore, and you don't know where that pressure is coming from. I think that begins to be a dynamic defense when you've got those two as kind of jokers or wild cards in the middle of that defense. But until then, if you got to keep him outside and you got, Joe Schmo off the street basically playing in the slot, and you got the 2 middle linebackers, whoo, bless you. You got the 2 middle linebackers playing in the middle that are 6 feet tall. The defense isn't going to be close to great until you're able to put these guys in the positions where they are best. And I think Witherspoon against 3 wide receiver sets is best in the nickel, as you said. You play him outside against 2 wide receivers, you play him inside against 3.
Yep, you do want to see him outside. So to all those arguing that you don't just get a guy for just nickel, it would really be a temporary solution. I don't long term want to see Devin Witherspoon in the nickel. That's not what I want. Mm-hmm. But it's such a liability at this point that why would you throw a Tariq at this point? Why would you throw a Devin Witherspoon when you can just get your yardage underneath in the middle? Like, you can just continuously throw it at Julian Love, throw it at Kobe Bryant, and it will get you a first down every time. Why would you ever need to throw at those guys if you got such a liability? You can't have that weak of a point at any point of your defense. It has to at least be solid or slightly below average. Slightly below average would be fine with me. That's why I'm fine with Artie Burns. Like, the guy, honestly, has only allowed 1 target. I think he's been targeted 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. He only allowed the 1.
Was he played 3 snaps?
Give me him.
He played 3 snaps, 3 targets, 3 snaps, something like that?
No, he's played 12 snaps. He played 12 snaps.
I'm messing around.
He played 12 snaps. They gave him 12 snaps, and I can't remember how many snaps they gave him in game 1. I'm mixing. Let me not get my stats confused. But I do know he played the 3rd most snaps of between Kobe, Julian. Already played 12 snaps. He held up well in those 12 snaps. I'm not looking for a game breaker. I'm just looking for a guy who can, like, not suck. And if he can not suck for me, then please, by all means, add him to the main roster. and see how he does. Because they've already used up his 2 call-ups, if I'm not mistaken. You can only call up a practice squad player twice before I believe you have to add them to the main roster. So especially if Tariq Woolen is still out, I'm thinking they may have to do that anyway, just because you kind of be down a guy.
Well, he's got experience. He's got the pedigree, right? First round pick out of Miami by the Steelers, 4 years with the Steelers. We saw, Mike Tomlin getting mad at him every Monday night and Sunday night game they played. But he's 6 feet tall. He's got length, right? And he's got the athleticism. Clearly, he played 1 year with the Bears. So the pedigree is there. I assume it's the old, Seahawks bringing in guys that fit the Seahawks mold physically, who they believe they can teach to become better. I get it. I see what they're trying to do. Same thing. It has absolutely had Brandon Browner, and go back to all those guys too. But you look at Caillou Kelly, same way, good length. Clearly there's some skill, and they want to show them exactly kind of, what to do in this particular scheme. I'm not hating on it. I look at a corner who's with his 3rd organization in 6 years. And you have to ask the question, what is it about him that isn't good enough to be on those other rosters? And is he good enough to be on this team? I think the answer is probably yes at this point, because we know what Michael Jackson is. We know what your boy Kobe Bryant is, right? We know what they are. They're not sufficient at this point. They need to fill that spot, as you said. And I think that is the weak spot on the defense. We're starting to see pass rush. We know what the middle linebackers are. Jaron Reed's holding up surprisingly at nose tackle. We're going to get Draymond Jones going. We got, the first and second corners we have. We know Jamal's coming back. That one spot is the 3rd corner. Why would you, if you're playing the Seahawks, why would you not come out in 3 wide receiver sets the entire game? The entire game. Your quarterback scans the defense. You look, you say, okay, there's Witherspoon over there. There's Woolen over there. We're either going to our tight end or we're going to the 3rd receiver, right? And even if it's zone, let me go to the middle of the field, because I know no one can cover there, or they're 6 feet tall. So I don't. They're like one player short from being a very good defense, in my opinion, at this point.
Agreed.
And I think that would unlock a ton.
It would. It really would, because it would force teams to have to be versatile. And right now, you don't have to. Right now, it's a really simple defense to play against if you're a quarterback. And, you might even see Bryce Young thrive a little bit more than he's thrived before, because of how easy it is, if you don't see them make the personnel adjustments that I think they really need to consider making. And we'll see. But if I'm Bryce Young, I'm just going to throw at Kobe Bryant, and I'm just going to throw at Julian Love and just keep it moving. So, but there's a question mark about if Jamal will play in week 3. My prediction preseason was that he was going to play week 4. I think that's still probably consistent. Pete Carroll still not giving it away that he's going to play just because it's going to be full go. I think Pete Carroll would like to have him do 2 full weeks of practice before putting him out in the game action, because they just want to be super careful with him coming back from that type of injury, which I understand. And that you'd love to have him in this game just from the fact of you just don't want it to be so easy to throw over the middle. But I guess we'll get into that when our preview. But
I would hold him out. I would hold whoever you can out this week against Carolina, just because I think you still have a very good chance to win at home against a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. And then even question whether you would want to play any of these guys. I'm thinking about Charles Cross as well. Cross, Adams, against the Giants in New York on Monday night, because if you sit Adams and you let him get healthy and he doesn't play next week or this week against Carolina, next week against New York, now you've got a bye week, right? And he doesn't have to come back until October 15th against the Bengals. And if you can get him a couple weeks of practice and up to speed, you can unleash him at that point in time. I just think having that bye week early right in that spot, while I don't like the bye week early, I think it is advantageous to someone like Jamal Adams that's trying to get back. Or maybe you get him a few reps against the Giants, right? And just get his feet wet and let him hit a little bit, and then rest in the bye week and come back against the Bengals. But
that's what I would do.
It's going to be some get well. And I like the Carolina game being there, because I think it is a game where you can limp in and still and still have a very good chance to win.
The only reason why I'm going to be careful about that logic is because I watched the Rams game.
Mm-hmm.
And we all said that about the Rams. Just get healthy.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Like, just let your guys, if you can sit them, sit them.
Right.
Everybody said that, right? We regretted it.
Hey,
we all regretted it.
Sean McVay, though. Sean McVay won that game in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Sean McVay and random Puka Nacua from BYU is what won them that game. And the reality is Carolina doesn't have that, right? I think Sean McVay is a unique coach who has Pete Carroll's number to a certain extent, at least offensively. And Carolina doesn't have the same, they don't have the same coaching talent. And Bryce Young isn't a, 10-year veteran or, 15-year veteran like a Matthew Stafford. He's a rookie. So I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing a win, but I am saying that if there's a question mark about the health of one of your most pivotal, most important players, like Mafe, like Metcalf, like Adams, like Cross, my instinct would be to sit them knowing that you have the opportunity to get them more rest and bring them back later and still win this game.
I'll meet you halfway. I want Mafe back. I think they need Mafe back. I think they're going to need to get pressure on Bryce Young, or he will sit back there and have a field day. That's for real. The guy is talented. He's a rookie, but he's talented. If he can sit back there all day long, then yeah, he's going to tear you apart, especially if he can just throw across the middle. And he has shown the ability to do that, even though he's short. Apparently, he can see the middle. We'll see how that pans out long term. But I found that interesting yesterday. Now they are coming off a short week, so you keep that in mind a little bit. But I want to see some players back. I'm fine if they hold out some. I can see holding out Jamal. I can see holding out Cross even, because that's a pretty. You don't want to, with the big guy, you don't want to play around with that kind of thing. But they can't just afford to hold out everybody, because you need some talent to beat the team. And the Panthers beat us last year. Okay,
but the NFL did them wrong. The NFL did the Panthers wrong. Panthers on Monday night, they got to travel across the country, East Coast to West Coast, and play in Seattle. Right? Yeah. That's an L. I'm sorry, that's an L for Carolina. And it's Brian Burns is a good pass rusher, right? And so is
he playing? Is he playing? I thought he was on. I thought he was in a holdout. Did he come back?
He did.
He did come back? Okay.
And Shaq Thompson, for those Husky fans out there, he's actually out for the year. So that changes their coverage with the linebackers too. But no, he's back. JC Horn is on injury reserve. I know we're going to go through and do the preview, or the Seahawks 360 will do the preview. But to me, the more I look at this, you see Shaq Thompson doubtful, JC Horn out. Carolina playing Monday night, short week, going cross country, rookie quarterback. There's a lot of things in the Seahawks' favor in this game. And you got a tough stretch coming up in the schedule. I'm gonna be on the other side and say I'm sitting everybody. I'm sitting Charles, Cross. I'm sitting DK if he feels like he's hurt and he can't go. If there's questions about any of these dudes, Seahawks are more talented. Seahawks are playing at home. Short week Carolina, again, inexperienced quarterback. To me, and I know the Seahawks history. I get it. Every time we guarantee the W, they lose. Every whole time. Against the Cardinals, against the Rams, I get it.
Yep.
I'm still doing that. I'm still going in, trusting that I'm going to be able to get away with this W and moving on, because I'm thinking long term about the rest of the year. But we'll see what they choose to do. It'll be interesting for sure.
I think it'll be a mix. I think it'll end up being more like what I said. They will play some guys, but then some guys. Because I feel like some guys they held out. Like Mafe, I feel like they held out just to be sure. Mm-hmm. So I can really see him coming back. I think they'll play some of the guys. I do think they'll sit some too. I think there'll be a mix, which I think it needs to be a mix, because call me crazy, but in my head for right now, the theme is always remember the Rams. Like I consider me humbled on the year. I will never. They stunk so badly against that team that the floor for what this team is now different in my mind than what it was before. But I hear you. I definitely hear you. Before we close out, I wanted to ask you this. Did you watch the Rams game and the 49ers game?
Most of it, yeah.
Are the Rams good?
Yeah. I think
Like,
so.
maybe.
Defensively, I still look at those names and I'm like, who, what, who, where'd this guy come from? Right. And they had no first round picks because of the Jalen Ramsey trade and a bunch of the other trades. I think if you put, this is a conclusion I came to. You put Matthew Stafford and his experience, right, and his arm talent together with Sean McVay, they are a threat. Just those two people alone are a threat, right? Now you've got the best defensive tackle in football, arguably now. I think Chris Jones is making an argument, but you've got AD on one side, and you've got Stafford being able to truly pick apart defenses, and the brain of Sean McVay. There's a reason why McVay is as great as he is. And so, yes, to answer your question, I think it's probably ultimately a 500 team with lacking talent, right? I think the question too is Cooper Kupp actually a good receiver? Because how much of it is scheme? I know he's good, but how much of it is scheme? And I'm just blasphemous because I live in Eastern Washington. But, you know, Puka Nacua is, we joke about him and he has talent, but does he have the talent to put up the stats he's put up so far this season? I think a lot of it is that particular role in the Sean McVay offense executed by Matthew Stafford is going to put up numbers, period.
Yeah, that's right.
Like hard stop. So, yes, I think you have to take them seriously. I don't think they're a playoff team ultimately. I think their lack of talent on the offensive line and their lack of talent on defense will show up eventually. And once injuries start to really hit, you're really going to see how little depth they have. But when the Seahawks play them again, do they have to take them seriously? Oh, absolutely. As long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, 100% they do. 100% they do.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, we thought they were going to be like a 3-4 win team, but like you said, it does seem like they look more like a 500 team, and they only really had three things going for them: Matt, Aaron, McVay. But apparently that's enough. Boggles my mind, but apparently that's enough.
We've seen it for years, though, right? Teams with a great quarterback and a smart coach or a brilliant coach, sometimes they don't even care. They care, but they don't. They act like they don't care about the rest of the team. Look at Mahomes. Mahomes is throwing to a bunch of Uber drivers at this point in time, and it's still Mahomes, right? And he's still gonna blow up. It's the way I see it is you have that quarterback that's able to process and understand defenses, and it doesn't matter who's surrounding him. The flip side is you take the Jets and you've got Dalvin Cook, you've got Breece Hall, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got an extremely talented offense and no quarterback. You have to have a smart or athletic, and you'd like to have both at quarterback to win. And you pair that with the brilliant mind as a coach, and you can really, at minimum, you're a 500 team, right? It's what the Patriots tried to do with Tom Brady for years. You had Josh McDaniels as their offensive coordinator and Tom Brady and a bunch of scrubs, but they still won Super Bowls because Brady is so smart. So yes, I'm surprised. I think I underestimated Matthew Stafford's talent is what it is. Coming into the season, I underestimated his health, and I forgot that he's a Hall of Fame quarterback because I don't want to believe that he is. But the reality is he is. And the reality is they traded for him and gave up 2 first rounders for him plus Jared Goff for a reason, right? The talent's there. So yeah, I think we have to worry about them. I think we have to worry even less about the Cardinals than we thought we did. The Cardinals.
I don't know. I really don't. Okay, so I can't tell, but the Cardinals have looked like they've had life. And I just kind of expected them to roll over and die, I'll be honest. I expected them to look like the Giants.
I think if
they haven't.
If they do show signs of life, and I think Dobbs is not a horrible quarterback, if they do show signs of life, you know what's going to happen? The organization is going to shut that down.
Yeah, that's true. I was kind of surprised they didn't shut them down.
Williams or bust, right? The organization is going to say, you know what, Josh Dobbs, we appreciate your service. We're good. We're going to play Clayton 2 now because we are not trying to win these games. That's what I think would happen. There's no reason for them to try to play well. With the quarterbacks coming out in this draft and them clearly not feeling connected to Kyler Murray, there is no reason for them to play well. You play like you know what, You get that first pick. They have the first and second pick in the draft, or the first pick plus the Texans pick, I think, in this next draft. So no, they're tanking. They're tanking. And if Josh Dobbs continues to do it, they're benching him. I promise you.
They got to do something. They got to do something because Josh Dobbs might be better than they thought, man. They thought they were picking the worst option, but it looks like Gannon got them some fire in their guts or something. So they were playing the Giants pretty tough, man. And it took a historic effort on the Giants' part to even win that game. Now, I do wonder if they sat a player or two for injury in order to lose that game.
Hey, trust. You watch. You're going to start seeing all the practice squads coming up. You're going to see no more Josh Dobbs. He's going to be in witness protection somewhere. Believe me, they are not winning no games this year.
Speaking of practice squad, did you know they took Joey Blunt?
No, really? No.
They put Budda Baker on IR and they stole Joey Blunt from our practice squad.
Budda Baker's probably not even hurt. He's like, we got an all-pro in our secondary. We're gonna pay you. Just go ahead and take, relax, do your thing. That's funny. No, they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. I think Cardinals will win 4 games. Rams will win 8 or 9 games. Seahawks, I think, are a wild card, and San Francisco end up winning 13, 14 games. That's
the Rams can't win more games than us, though.
I think they'll win 8, 7, 8, 9, maybe if they're lucky. But yeah, to your point, Rams are not a pushover this year. They're not. They're not. It's fun.
So, it'll make for a very interesting, a more interesting NFC West. Not that that's great for the Seahawks, but we expected to have 2 of the worst teams in the league, and it doesn't look like that's happening. The worst teams in the league seem to be a little unexpected this year. So anyway, it's really early, but I think there are some positives to take away from the game for sure. I think there are still some concerns, a lot of room to grow from the defense, but I liked what I saw. If they can continue to build off of what I saw, then I think the Seahawks will be in good shape. Any final comments before we end for the game?
No, just I love Witherspoon even more than I thought I would. I love what he does to the defense. I think he is kind of that missing piece. Can't wait to see what happens when Jamal comes back and those two can play together, if Jamal is truly back. And I'm going to say it every week, and people are probably going to call me old and Midwest and Michigan and all those things, but run the ball more. I want them to run the ball. I want the Seahawks to run the ball more. I want them to keep the defense off the field. I want them to allow Geno into play action. I want to see more bootlegs to the tight ends. I like that stuff. That's my Michigan roots. I like all that stuff. I don't need explosiveness. I need you to control the line of scrimmage, run the ball. And I think Kenneth Walker can run the ball more, right? And you spent a 2nd-round pick on Zach Charbonnet. I know you disagree with me, but that to me is something I want to see them do more of. I'm sure you want to see them run the ball less and throw it more to JSN, but
well, I'll say this. I agree with you I agree with you in spirit, but I'm team play to your personnel. And I don't want to see them run into a wall over and over and over. And so what I'm happy to see is that Shane Waldron has seen, he's attempted to do the run a fair amount enough. I'm not going to say that they have abandoned the run because they haven't. They've done enough to be respectable. And basically he's saying in these games, it's not working. Let's go with what works. And the reason I'm okay with not running the ball is not because I don't think that there will be times when they need to run the ball, because they will. There will be times when they'll need to run the ball, to your point. But so I'm not extremist, but I'm just on the sense of I've seen too many Seahawks teams and coordinators that just run into a brick wall. And I don't want to see that. So because I don't want to see that, and because that's what I assume if you run the ball more, it's going to look like, that's why I'm okay with them not running the ball as much. But what I want is really for the O-line to get better at run blocking. Right. That's really what I want. If the O-line was better at run blocking, I think I would be in lockstep with you at least a little bit. I'm a little bit more nuanced.
Let me make 2 points. One is Geno Smith threw the ball 41 times. And I don't think that's a recipe for the Seahawks to win over the course of the season. I get that they won against the Lions. I want to see that number come down into the 30s, maybe even low 30s. I also
35.
Okay.
35?
But sure, 35.
All right.
Philosophically, we're a little different at times. I like that, right? I like the conversation. What I'm going to say, though, is I challenge Shane Waldron and the organization to be more creative with their running plays as well, right? San Francisco runs the ball all the time. And yes, they have Trent Williams, but look how creative some of their counter plays are, right? Look how creative they are in their schemes. Atlanta Falcons, same thing. Arthur Smith scheming for Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. And yes, Bijan is probably the most explosive running back in football at this point in time. But the reality is that they have running schemes, blocking schemes that are different, right? They're trying new things. Look at Miami. Raheem Mostert ran wild this weekend. But it's not because Mostert is great. It's in part that Mike McDaniel has such incredible run schemes that he learned from that same, tree of creative guys.
Yep.
For me, it's not, it's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust, University of Michigan, Bo Schembechler football. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying be creative with it, right? Let's get the wide receivers on jet sweeps the way they were trying to with D. Eskridge over the years, but do it in a more creative fashion, right? Do some things that are just let's run some counters. Let's do some different stuff to get running lanes for K9 and for Zach Charbonnet. I just think controlling the ball, not making Geno throw it too much, controlling the ball, keeping that defense off the field so that the lack of depth doesn't show, right, is the way to control the game and win for the Seahawks. And I still think, despite Pete Carroll showing some different stripes at times, I still think that's what he reverts to, is wanting to be not necessarily run the ball, but control the ball as much as he possibly can.
And I agree, because you need to be able to do both. And right now, I don't feel confident that they can really run the ball if they needed to run the ball. And that's where my concern is. So I agree with the point on being more creative. That will help a lot, because they do need to go to it at times. I have a little bit more faith in Geno's arm than you do, but I will say this with Geno. I think I'm learning that Geno doesn't play well in bad weather. I think the better the weather, the better Geno plays, which is why he kills it in domes, right? Lions, Saints, plays better. I think some of his play in falling off last season was about the tackles sort of getting beat up. We had no running backs, but I also don't think he just plays as well in cold weather. I think that's a factor. Now this year will confirm or deny that for me, but I anticipate that when it gets colder, he won't be as effective, which is understandable. Like, that's not like a huge flaw in anyone's game. And for that reason, I do agree with you. So it would be good if we can see some of that. I agree with that point for sure. And I would like to see them getting Kenneth Walker going just a little bit more. Like, it's respectable. It's enough to be respected, but they do need to be able to go to that sometimes. Now, I love what I saw from Zach Charbonnet. He's your three yards in a cloud of dust guy. He's got some power, man. He really does. I mean, it's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but if you go back and watch the film on him, huge fan of him. And I'm glad you mentioned this, because I forgot to bring this up in one of my positives. You go back and look at the snap count for this past week. DJ Dallas only got 9 snaps, and Dak Charbonnet got 19. So they're really leaning on him as that backup guy, or at least they gave him the opportunity to. And I think hopefully they were impressed enough with what they saw from Charbonnet to continue that, because that's kind of how I want it to go. Like, I need Charbonnet to be next in line after Kenneth Walker and not DJ Dallas. Sorry, DJ, but Charbonnet's got something special. If you just give him, you do need to give him a little bit more to work with, though, if you're the O-line.
Yep. He's got juice. He doesn't have quite the wiggle, but he's got juice and he's got power that we're not used to seeing necessarily out of that position, right? And I think he's the perfect complement to the shiftiness of Kenneth Walker, right? In that he does run with a little more power. But yes, to your point, he needs a hole. He's not creating his own hole, and his vision is good. I don't think he's not making something out of nothing, I guess is the best way to put it. But
let's just not sheer running dudes over, because he can do that. But I also, again, not to go on for too long, but I think when you establish the run, what it does, we all know it pulls the safeties up and it creates space deep. And we all know that the Seahawks want to throw deep, and they have the personnel to be able to throw deep. And you can't throw deep if both safeties are playing back. But if you can draw one of those safeties up because the running game is successful, you can start to go over the top. So I don't know.
I'm just happy they won. Whatever you need to do to win, I don't care if it's 3-0 in the most ugliest game in the world. Let's just go win, right? Let's go win the game and move on. So 1-1. I'll take the win against the Lions. Color me slightly surprised, even though I picked them. They will win next week. I guarantee you that. I will promise you that right now.
You have jinxed us. You have jinxed that. Do we take it back, Americans? We take it back.
Hey, you can
edit that out. We take it back. We're not guaranteeing wins. Not on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm guaranteeing the win.
No, Tino.
Yes.
Tino cursing us. Oh no, guys.
I'm going there.
I wasn't afraid about this game before. Now I am. Okay. Anywho, we'll see how that goes. Yep. The preview will be very interesting. Since Tino seemed determined to fail the Seahawks. Okay. Right. With that, why don't you tell the people where they can find you and what you got going on?
For sure. So Twitter at Tino Jr. 20, TINOJR20. The Mariners cast at Ethos Mariners. This week, the Mariners are in Oakland for a 3-game set. I preview the pitching matchups, go into depth with the numbers, review the previous game. The big series are coming up against Houston and the Texas Rangers. They are still in the hunt. Lots of fun. Come nerd out with me on the Mariners cast. I got that going on. I don't have a guest lined up yet for this week. We're looking at one for next week. And we will be doing at least 2 Mariners casts a week in the off season as well. So good times. Love me some baseball. Love sports in general, but love me some baseball. Love me some Seattle sports. Had a blast with you today. I appreciate this. This is always fun. Can't wait to do the preview. If I'm invited on to do that, and yes, I am guaranteeing that win. Absolutely.
All right. I got to find another guest. All right, Tina. Thanks for hopping on. Sure. Thank you guys for listening. As always, be sure to find the show at Ethos Seahawks for our latest update, news, analysis, stats. I'm the girl for that. Also, continue. If you are listening on YouTube, please give a subscribe, give a like or a follow. If you're listening on iTunes, give us a 5-star review. I'll shout you out if you do, I promise. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. That's it. We're out. And as always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.